Not to be confused with a Karate Kid or even a Kung Fu Master. This is Sega Masters. Nothing like mystical, foreboding flames against a black background to set the stage for today's game, Kung Fu Kid. As the title suggests, this cart represents Sega's third attempt at an arcade-style beat-em-up on the Master System. But this cool intro shows Sega decided to add a touch of ghosts and goblins to the formula for this go-around. Now, as we all know, Sega's previous attempts at side-scrolling brawlers for their console have been less than successful. My Hero was pretty much an ugly, unplayable horror, while Black Belt was decent yet generic after being stripped of its anime license. So anything has to be an improvement over those two. Interestingly enough, Kung Fu Kid is actually a loosely connected follow-up to a cart released back in 1985 for Sega's original SG-1000 console in Japan, Dragon Wang. Awkward name aside, it was clearly Sega's attempt to rip off Irem's classic coin-op Kung Fu Master, but as you can see it fails miserably at being any good, mainly due to its slow-moving character and overwhelming difficulty. For whatever reason, Sega decided to craft this sequel for the Master System, and compared to the previously mentioned duds, Kung Fu Kid does offer a step in the right direction for beat-em-ups, though not as big of one as you'd like. The storyline is about what you'd expect. The game centers around a young martial artist who's unfortunately named Wang, please try not to laugh, as he embarks on a quest to save a Chinese countryside from the hordes of the ancient evil Mandana, who also murdered your master, so there's the required vengeance factor for these type of games. Anyway, this 7-stage game is much like other belt scrollers. You fight your way through waves of endlessly cloned foes to the end of the level within a given time limit, and your adversaries include an army of thugs as well as a slate of mystical Oriental stereotypes, such as these hopping Chinese vampires. Despite being a supposed Kung Fu disciple, Wang never uses his fists. Instead, his moveset is limited to his lightning-fast kicks that can strike at a few different heights. Amazingly, Wang somehow possesses the ability to break away from Earth's gravity, as he can jump super high into the stratosphere. Fortunately, you can control your movements in midair, and certain spots even allow you to perform a sweet wall jump. Wang can also collect some powerful talismans that can be chucked at the baddies, some of which can only be killed this way. Of course, the boss awaits to challenge you to one-on-one combat at the end of the stage. They're immune to the talismans, so it comes down to avoiding their attacks and fighting back with your feet. Do enough damage to knock your aggressor out, and you're awarded your time and life bonuses before marching on to the next stage. Now you're in the second level with more baddies to fight, including these deadly caterpillars that you can actually kick into your foes like projectiles. This cart does a solid job with its presentation, as the bright, detailed environments set up a decent atmosphere for the action. And you'll definitely want to check out the awesomely illustrated dragon on the 5th stage. While the sprites aren't earth-shattering, they sport some good details and decent enough animation, especially the bosses, though Wang himself looks like a Fisher-Price figure lacking a mouth. Plus everything moves silky smooth with very few hiccups, including the scrolling. The upbeat Oriental sounding tunes that compose the game's soundtrack complement the action nicely, though some tracks are better than others, and the sound effects are just there. Unfortunately, the visuals are backed up by some rather lacking gameplay. The basic ingredients are there, but the stages are a little too straightforward. All you do mainly is walk across the landscape kicking things out of your way, with almost no variety in the action, just like most other belt scrollers. 2 of the levels try to shake things up with a maze-like layout where you finally get to use your wall jump, but even then you follow a mostly linear path with no chance for exploration. The controls are responsive and easy to understand, but take a bit of practice since the reverse NES standard is used for the action buttons. Welding the talismans is also more tricky than it should be, and keep in mind that Wang is a little slow in unleashing them. Then again, you also find that you don't really have to fight the minor enemies at all. Thanks to your freakish jumping ability, you can simply leap over your foes and outrun them to avoid them entirely. And the game does very little to prevent this cheap tactic. On the other hand, to perhaps make up for it, no mid-level checkpoints are offered, Losing a life forces you to start the entire stage over, even if you reach the boss, which can get more than a little annoying. Speaking of which, the boss battles themselves aren't very exciting either, since they all have easy to spot patterns, and once you learn them you can beat each one almost without breaking a sweat. Even the final showdown with Mandana on top of his temple is a letdown, and all you're rewarded with for completing the game is a quick "the end" before going back to the title screen. Overall, I wouldn't classify Kung Fu Kid as a bad game. Some decent enough brawling action is provided with some good presentation on top of it, but the cart leaves you feeling it could have been so much more. It's just disappointing how much potential Sega failed to take advantage of, that with more polish and more inspired level design, this cart could have been something special. Instead, you're left with just another unremarkable belt scroller with nothing to help it stand out other than the setting. Kung Fu Kid will satisfy your beat-em-up itch in short bursts, but you'll be looking for a more mature battle before long.